Good day, folks. Everything new under the sun, March 20th, 2023. And more talk about the Third Temple. So this is Bibi Netanyahu. He is speaking about the Third Temple to the UN. Construction of the temple, the Third Temple, will not be an obstacle to peace with Palestinians, so says he. Now, this is interesting. We know in the last days that a Third Temple is built because the Antichrist will come in and he will cause the sacrifices to cease at some point, which means if the sacrifices are ceased, that means they must have been started. And going backwards again, that means a Third Temple must have been built. Now, you would expect then people to be talking about the Third Temple in the last days. And indeed we do. And I think we're very, very close to that, maybe on the cusp of the realization of this. And Netanyahu, who was an interesting character himself, is saying to the UN that, it's not going to be a problem. And you know what? That's exactly what the Antichrist is going to say. He says it's not going to be a problem. We're going to create peace. We're going to let the Jews rebuild their Third Temple. And all the three monotheistic religions are going to have a peace and prosperity on the Temple Mount. Everybody's going to be able to worship whichever deity they would like. So Benjamin said, the fact is that the Israeli PM told world leaders at the United Nations a Jewish temple used to stand right where the Alaska Mosque Plaza sits right now. Even Muslim archaeologists have reported its existence. And that's true. There's Muslim archaeologists and experts from, I think it's Saudi Arabia, correct me if I'm wrong, that have come out and said, yep, this is history. The Palestinians like to deny history, but he declares it is indeed. And so Bibi said, despite this, Netanyahu has preemptively asserted, let me scroll down, that like the West Bank settlements, a Third Temple won't be an obstacle to peace with the Palestinians. It is a lot like a masterfully maintained comb-over, Bibi explained. And he's talking about, making a reference to Trump, I guess, there. So that's interesting that he doesn't think it will be an obstacle to peace. And in fact, it will be the thing that brings people together, that allows peace. And that's exactly what the Antichrist is going to do. This is the Times of Israel in swipe at Biden. Netanyahu pledges to build in Jerusalem. Is he, warming or checking the temperature of the water for the rebuilding of the Third Temple? Is that in the back of his mind? I know there's certainly conservatives in his caucus, in his political group that would like the Third Temple to be rebuilt. And there is a disconnect now between Biden, the United States, and Israel. They're not getting along, and Democratic presidents don't seem to get along with the Israeli leaders. Go figure. It says Prime Minister Netanyahu weighed in on the recent tensions in Jerusalem at the start of the weekly cabinet meeting on Sunday, emphasizing that Israel retains the right to build in Jerusalem after the Biden administration criticized the impeding evictions of Palestinian families. So that's interesting. And why is that interesting? Because let me go here. Ezekiel 38 seems to describe a time when possibly the Western nations and possibly the United States are not coming to the aid of Israel at the time that this particular invasion occurs. And so it's speaking of the war of Gog-Magog. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates. Why? To take a spoil, to take a prey, and to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited. So that's basically the Jews in the land since 1948, the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of many nations. That's a gathering of the people of Israel, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. So Israel has, the people have become rich. The land, the country of Israel is very, very rich in produce, in cattle, in goods of all sorts. It says, Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish. Now, some people described that, basically Tarshish, as Britain. and with all the young lions thereof, so the young lions, the offspring of Britain and those quote-unquote Western nations, and that would be, United States, Canada, Australia, those sorts of nations. So that's what the young lions, it could be describing there. And so with all the young lions thereof shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Thou hast gathered thy company to take a prey. So they're just asking questions. It's almost as if, Biden is saying to Putin, have you come to take a spoil? What are you doing in Israel? Are you stealing from them? Do you need money to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take great spoil? So they're kind of supporting Israel, but not actually willing to come to the aid of Israel militarily. They either cannot come to the aid of Israel during this war of Gog-Magog in Ezekiel 38 and 39. They can't, or they are unwilling. And certainly, looking at the state of the United States right now and the Biden presidency, if Gog-Magog were to happen, would the United States come to Israel's defense during that time? I don't know. This is an interesting one, and this could very well be basically another red line, which kind of kicks off the 7-year period. So the 7-year period, the 7-year tribulation, is for the salvation of the Jewish nation. Now, J.D. Farag, I believe, coined that. But the 7 years is really focusing on the nation of Israel, and a lot of things are happening during that period at that time, specifically the Antichrist, allowing them to rebuild the third temple, creating a peace for 7 years, for a period of 7 years, and then ultimately sitting on the throne in the third temple, declaring himself to be God. So everything's centered around Jerusalem, around Israel at that point in time. Now, what could kick off the 7 years is, we're in a time of Gentiles right now. And the point of the Gentiles, the Great Commission, is to grow and preach the gospel, to the Great Commission of spreading the gospel of Christ. Now, we've attempted to spread that to everybody. Christians are, or at least should be doing that, even to Jews. But the Jews are rejecting us. And that could be God's red line to kick off the 7-year period, to say, you know what, the times of the Gentiles is done. They can't reach the Jews anymore, and they've done what they were going to do during the time of the Gentiles. Therefore, we move into the 7-year period, which is to focus on the Jewish people. 2 Knesset members proposed legislation to outlaw sharing the gospel in Israel and send violators to prison. Could it become law is the big question. So this written by Joel C. Rosenberg. So if they outlaw Christians spreading the gospel in Israel, that could be where God says, okay, the times of the Gentiles is up now. Now comes, effectively the tribulation of the wrath of the Jewish people, on the Jewish people, the hard times, Jacob's trouble. And so, again, this could be it, where they completely reject any Christians telling them about the gospel of Jesus. And God says, fine, now we're heading into the time where we're going to focus directly on you. And more specifically, God's going to focus directly on the Jews at that point in time. So that's very interesting. And I look at that as kind of like a red line and a dividing of times between the Gentile years and rule, and moving over to a time where Israel is the focus of end-time Bible prophecy. So I don't know if that's valid or not. We're going to find out soon enough. But they're looking to outlaw and send you to jail if you're preaching the gospel. You know what? That's going to happen all around the world too. When the Antichrist comes to power, he's not going to want any Christians spreading any gospel. And a lot of us are going to have to go to jail or lose a lot of freedom if we're doing that. Over to the war in Ukraine. It's shaping up to be World War III. It is a distraction from the economic collapse, or the economic collapse is a distraction from the war, whichever you prefer. One always causes the other. One always triggers the other. They go hand in hand effectively. If you look throughout history, they go hand in hand. And this is when kingdoms switch over from one kingdom to another kingdom, from one monetary system to another. Colossal mushroom fire. Not a mushroom cloud yet, but a mushroom fire in the Dnieper. Russians blew up an armored train and a Leopard 2. So here we go. The Leopard 2's tanks are in Ukraine, and they are now being wiped out by Russia. So there's a video apparently of this. where, and I don't know if I can play it or not. There it is. I don't think there's no sound to that. There's the explosion there, which you can't see. Let me scroll up there. There's a big explosion. Let me see if we can play this one here. I think it's the same one there. Yeah, it looks like a big nuclear mushroom cloud going off. But basically the Russians blew up warehouses and a train, apparently an armored train that had NATO equipment on board, which apparently included a Leopard tank. Now, Russia said they were going to wipe out every single tank that gets there. When will the Abrams main battle tank get there, and what will they do about that? I don't know. But here's the next thing. Russia is preparing for total war with NATO. Now, I will clarify this and say that Russia has already prepared for total war with NATO. They always knew it would escalate to that, and that's what their nuclear stockpile is. Their generals, as I've told you before, there are videos of their generals on TV stations and interviews saying, we cannot go head-to-head and beat NATO with conventional weapons. They know it. They cannot do that. They simply don't have the manpower, the finances, etc. And so all along for the last 50, 60, whatever it is, number of years, they've always planned that if they get to the point where they can't compete with the conventional side of things, they will escalate to nuclear, and they've calculated that they have enough nuclear weapons to destroy NATO. So that is their end game, effectively, to deal with NATO. They know it. They know it's coming. This is part of their war doctrine, and this is really the next escalation there. And I don't think they want to use nuclear weapons, but it's an existential threat for them. So if it is an existential threat, then they will use it. And what really kicks all this off is this crazy warrant for Putin's arrest. Now, I'm not saying it's not needed or necessary or warranted, if you will, for Putin, but I will say it's an escalation. It's a poke in the eye. It's a daring Putin to do the next big thing. And really, he's not only in a corner anymore. He has absolutely no choice. There's no face saving here. There is no way to create peace with Putin anymore now that you've declared him an international criminal and have put a warrant out for his arrest. He cannot live a normal life ever again. Even if he winds down the war in Ukraine, they will still be trying to take him to court. So it's done. It's over. World War III is effectively started by declaring that he's a war criminal. If it wasn't started already, and we know it was. And this article is correct. Any attempt at reconciliation between the West and Russia ends as the International Criminal Court today issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin, accusing him of war crimes. Now, again, I'm not saying it's not something that is deserved by Putin or the leadership. What I am saying is that effectively that's the final nail in the coffin. There's no going back. There's no creating peace now with Russia because they will go after Putin, and it's an existential threat for Russia as a country and Putin as a person. And so we are at war. And it says it rightly. You see that bolded line at the bottom. NATO and the West have just officially declared war on Russia by declaring Putin a war criminal and putting the warrant out for his arrest. So that is March 17th, 3 days ago. We are in World War III. Your government, your mainstream media just has not told you yet. Here is Polish ambassador's shock statement. Warsaw will declare war on Russia as soon as Ukraine is defeated. So it seems like NATO and Poland here are just waiting for Ukraine and all the people of Ukraine to be wiped out, to be killed in war. And then they will ultimately declare war on Russia at that point. Moscow says the coalition of the willing will be crushed. That's always the name of it when they go into Desert Storm or Middle East wars. It's always a coalition of the willing and, against the axis of evil. And Russia is going to destroy this coalition. Poland will declare war on Russia if Ukraine is defeated on the battlefield. This is a very serious revelation was made by Poland ambassador in France. It says, if Ukraine fails to defend itself, then we will have no choice but to go to war. It is important for us that Ukraine wins, and this is really it. Here's a tweet If today Ukraine does not defend its independence and sovereignty, we will be forced to enter the conflict with Russia. Again, a declaration of World War III, declaration of war against Russia, criminal warrant out for Putin. And folks, you have World War III there, on top of economic collapse and the contagion of the bank runs, etc. This is all converging. This is accelerating. Remember, this is birth pains. As we get on closer and closer to the rapture of the church, which is the delivery of the baby, if you will, in the birth pains, the contractions, the pain will get stronger and much more closely grouped together. So the rhetoric may go down for a short while, but it will come right back up louder and stronger and with more frequently. And this is where we are. So it is getting loud now, folks. Things are getting expensive in the stores. Hyperinflation is happening. Banks are failing all around. The markets are scared. And the governments right now are printing money out of thin air as fast as they can. You know what the cure is to the economic collapse? Go to war. Because then they can implement martial law. Then they can tamp down on you saying anything against the government. They can remove me from YouTube for saying that what the government is doing is wrong. And they will. They will tamp down on free speech. They will lock down free speech, as they have done in other wars. They will call it misinformation, disinformation, propaganda from anybody who isn't a government mouthpiece. So look for more censorship in the very, very near future. Things are going down, folks, and you need to be prepared, because ultimately, I don't think we can store enough, stock enough, or defend enough without faith in the Lord for Him to provide for us. And that's ultimately where our hearts need to be, where our minds need to be. The end, I've read the end of the book. We are basically in the end of the book, if you will, the book of Revelation in the Bible. And we win. But times do get very, very hard in the last days, just as they have been hard for Christians throughout the ages. There's been persecution and hardship all the way through there. So don't expect that you'll skip that. If you do, great. Good for you. But most of the Christians across most of the years of the history of the Bible and the world have had to endure some sort of persecution. Some great, some lesser so. But it's coming. And the Lord told us it was coming so that we could prepare our hearts for these things and know that we have eternal peace in Jesus Christ. If you don't know Him, He died on the cross and rose again about 2,000 years ago for my sin and your sin. He's coming back soon, but some incredible events are going to come. We're here to watch the fireworks show. And that's not to glorify the sin that is causing all this. That's to say we're looking forward to the return of the Lord and Him and the righteous judge coming to make all things right. So this is the final, really the fireworks display to herald the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.